Hello and welcome to Living Proof, the Isaac Newton Institute podcast. My name is Dan Aspel. In today's episode, we're going to be speaking to Professor Bethany Marsh of the University of Leeds. Bethany was a recipient of the Whitehead Prize in 2009, and she's also one of the organisers of the Cluster Algebras and Representation Theory programme. But our main topic today is going to be about Bethany's recent gender transition and the positive effects that has led to. We hope you enjoyed the episode. My name is Dan Aspel and I'm here on the mic today with Bethany Marsh.
Hello, it's very nice to be here.
Thank you, and Christy Marr.
Hi.
And we are here because, Bethany, you are at the Newton Institute as part of the Cluster Algebras and Representation Theory, for which you are one of the organisers.
Yes, that's right. Karen Bauer is the lead organiser, and there are three of us co-organisers for all working together. So it's a great team.
And is this your first time at the INI?
I've been here a few times before, actually. I was here in 1997. I think it was on a meeting on Lie theory. And actually, I met one of my first collaborators there. Oh, here. So that was Constanza Reach. And I can still remember discussing with her things about braid group actions and parameterizations of the canonical basis and total positivity. She was interested in total positivity. I was interested in the canonical basis. And when we talked, we realised that there was an overlap between them. There was a potential interaction. And we've written at least 3 papers since then, so it's been quite a good story.
And are you still collaborating now?
We're not actually working on a paper right now, but it's quite possible we will do that again.
That's tremendous. That is exactly the kind of story which we love to hear. And that wasn't pre-planned. I didn't know the answer to that before I asked you. So what a joy to know that your past with the INI goes back 24 years at least. That's really, really cool.
Yeah, it was quite exciting to be here. And in fact, the paper we've written very recently is one of my best papers. So that really set me off on a good direction.
So I guess that must have been a big inspiration for wanting to propose the CAR programme, as we'll call it for short.
Yes, I know. It's how important it is particularly for early career researchers, to have the chance to come here and make connections, especially at the moment with the pandemic.
Yeah, indeed. And I mean, for us, Christy, as people who work here and almost live here in some cases during busy periods, it is a really wonderful feeling. I mean, there's people walking past the door now as we're speaking. We've got at least 2 events running today, and they're physically well attended as well as virtually. So it's a real joy, isn't it?
Absolutely, it's lovely. It's this is such a magical building, and has been ever since I got here almost a decade ago, and it was just sad, the emptiness of it during the COVID period, and it's just wonderful. The magic has returned, the buzz, the energy has returned, and it again fills my heart with joy when I walk in through the building each morning.
Yeah, and part of that obviously is Bethany and her colleagues.
Absolutely.
And so, Bethany, you proposed this programme. I'm guessing that's been a few years in the making. Is that right?
Yes, and it's definitely Karen's inspiration, actually. She's the one who said, let's do this.
Karen's your colleague, is she not?
Karen Bauer, yes.
Yeah, you're both at Leeds. Yeah.
She's moving to Leeds, so she said, as part of that move, she was saying, let's go for a Newton Institute meeting.
Excellent. And as I say, it's just very exciting to have you here. How did you find yourself at Leeds? What direction has your career taken? In 1997 you were here at a programme. Was that as an early career researcher?
That's right. I think at that time I was a postdoc in Glasgow. For 2 years. And then I got a lectureship position in Leicester. And I was there for about 8 years, that's right, until 2006. And I thought about Leeds a bit, and it's got a sort of a famous history because Alfred Goldie was a famous ring theorist there for many years, and there was a good algebra group there led by Bill Crawley-Booby, and he asked me if I might be interested in moving. So I applied for the job, and it was a great career move, I think, because being in Leeds has been a very exciting time. And things have changed. Bill has moved on, and Karen has come. But there's a good group there. There's a big group in representation theory of algebras, with sort of different interests. There's people interested in mathematical physics, algebraic groups. But I think finite dimensional algebras is the common theme. So I feel like I'm surrounded by people that have close interests but differing interests. So there's a chance for discussion, but the interests are close enough so that there's a possibility for collaboration. There's a lot of collaboration actually between us all.
That's lovely. We see that in your publications, actually.
You can see all the colleagues listed
yes,
there.
Exactly.
That's right.
That sounds tremendously exciting. And has it always been maths for you? Was there ever any possibility of you not becoming a mathematician?
I think it has. I can remember as a child there were books on calculator games and patterns in numbers and things like that, and I would spend hours playing around with those. And one thing I remember doing was just adding up the numbers, so 1 + 2 + 3 + 4 + 5, and just keep going. And I had sheets and sheets of paper with all those calculations on. And then my father was a physics lecturer at the time at Coventry Polytechnic, now Coventry University, and he had access to a computer. So I said, "Could you get the computer to calculate this?" And then of course it was all wrong. So because you make one mistake in that calculation, it propagates through, and there were several mistakes. And then, because later on I learned there's a beautiful formula for calculating it directly. You don't actually have to add them all up. But it was quite fun experimenting.
That's wonderful, because as far as sort of charming childish behaviours go, that's quite a high end one. I think making that small mistake. I think I used to write letters to video game makers telling them new levels I thought they should put into their games. So I think yours is a little bit more highbrow. But that's really charming that your dad really engaged with that. Yes,
he was certainly inspiring from that point of view. I went to the university, to the Polytechnic on occasion, so I would walk down endless corridors, these endless university corridors that you have, meet some of his colleagues, and it was always sort of mysterious workplace, and there were the physics open days and things like that.
But you were drawn to the pure, so he was in physics and you were drawn to the pure maths.
Yes, that's true. I think part of that was when I was an A-level student, or maybe, yes. No, that's right. Sorry, when I was an O-level student, I was doing chemistry. And I do remember spending a whole lesson adding an acid to an acid and trying to neutralise it. It just wasn't very practical.
Your litmus test's going all wrong.
That was the litmus test for me, wasn't it? I wasn't a chemist. So yeah, I've always preferred. In the mathematical world, everything's sort of very, very clear and precise. You could control it. You know what's going on. But I mean, I am interested in physics. I read The New Scientist, and I love reading about quantum theory and things like that, and seeing the latest developments. So I think over time I've sort of become a bit more, a bit happier about physics, particularly mathematical physics, and I could see even doing some research in that area at some point if I can learn enough about it.
Yeah, that's always exciting to hear, because and I'm an outsider to the world of academic maths to a degree, but it does seem as though it's very easy to become extremely specialised rather than have that sort of ability to step into other fields and apply learning from one to another. Is that fair?
I think there's a danger of that, yes, that you can end up being sort of very focused in the one field.
But in a way, that's exactly what we're countering at the Newton Institute, is deliberately we're bringing together different communities who often don't speak, and then they suddenly find huge commonalities, and in a way it's those commonalities that shed light on each of the separate fields and result in breakthroughs.
Yeah, and we're actually planning, aren't we, Bethany, to do another podcast recording about your programme with yourself and your colleagues. So perhaps we can ask those questions then as well about how much interaction there's going to be across different fields who otherwise might not know one another.
And I think we're all actually really keen on those kind of interactions. I think that's why we've been drawn to the Institute. And I think a lot of the work I've done has come from the interactions. So I think there's perhaps two main ways to do mathematics. I mean, of course there are many, but that's one way to look at it. You can really focus on one field, and I think that's really important that people do that you really focus and you become just a real expert on that field and develop that field forward, and that can really lead to breakthroughs. And I think another way to do with it, which sort of gels with me, is where you try to learn a little bit about different areas, and then you can see the connections between them, and that gives you the chance to do something completely new that others might not have thought of, because you know something about the other field, and you can bring that into the field you're working on.
I love that. I love seeing those patterns and there's suddenly one thing shedding light on another thing, and I think there's magic there too. I think it's an amazing, and I love seeing those conversations that participants are having here from different programs. Actually, one of the things that I find very interesting is lots of those more significant breakthroughs happen when we have participants from different programs sharing accommodation, and they're just talking, and it's just happenstance that they happen to be sharing an apartment together, and they're talking about things, and then suddenly they go off and they're collaborating together for years to come, and it's such fun seeing that sort of thing happening.
I know, it's very exciting. This might happen this time with the social event with the two programmes.
Absolutely, because we're now having Friday evening joint drinks between the two programmes, aren't we? So
yes,
that's good. With the machine learning programme.
Oh yes, I was going to say, so that was thought a good mix to throw the machine learning experts in with the cluster algebra.
Yeah,
crew.
and I think there's lots of potential there. Actually, I think I'm looking forward to hearing about those interactions.
Yes, cluster algebra has some kind of dynamic feel that you start with an initial cluster and then you mutate it. So it's got a sort of integrable systems feel, something like that. And I could imagine those ideas coming up in machine learning, but I don't really know anything about machine learning, so you'd have to talk to them.
There's an opportunity for you.
Yes.
It always pleases me that so many of these interactions seem to come during the socials, because it always gets, in the best possible way, really loud here whenever people are gathered and talking after a day of seminars. So it's really nice to hear that that's where the dynamic occurs in a lot of cases. Yeah, well, thank you for telling us a little bit about your past, Bethany. And I wanted to ask, because I think another topic which we're really interested to talk to you about is that you've only recently become known as Bethany.
Yes, that's right.
So you recently, by which I mean in the past year and a half, I think that's right to say, transitioned gender. So it's a ridiculously broad question, but can you introduce us to how this came about at all?
Oh yes, it's quite a long story, of course.
Well, we'd love to hear.
So I guess I've always been drawn to femininity and expressing myself that way. But for a long time, that was not something that I felt very comfortable doing publicly, and it was done in secrecy, I guess, that I would dress up in a dress or something and put some makeup on at home, or I would go out in a city that I didn't know anyone in case I ran into someone. I do remember once actually walking along the street, and there was a lovely couple walking towards me, and I thought, oh no, they're going to tell they're going to be able to tell that I'm not a woman, and so I crossed over, and of course they thought that I was. I was avoiding them, that I was scared of them, and they shouted, "Oh, we're not going to hurt you. So you don't have to worry." So it was a bit tricky for many years, but also I felt like it was just like, well, I like to do that from time to time, but it's not like something I feel like I really have to do. And
this has been for almost all of your life.
Yes, it was maybe 3 or 4 years ago that things started to change.
Okay.
Yes, I was. Well, I think what it probably did is that I ended up working really, really hard, and I think that might be related to sort of suppressing this aspect of myself. And so I went to see a therapist to talk about that, and that was a really good thing to do. I really got a lot of support from that, and was able to. But the reason I went was because of working too hard. I thought, well, I need to find a way to have a more balanced life, because I really think that's what we all need. We can't just work all the time. And so I went to talk about that. But then, of course, one thing led to another, and we talked about the gender issue. And there was a real breakthrough one day, and she said, well, why don't you come as Bethany to the therapy? And so I turned up as Bethany, and then it was like, oh, then I've got a whole evening. I could be Bethany for the whole evening after that, because I'm all ready. And so I started doing that every week, and then I had an evening as Bethany a week, and oh, I really like this, actually. And so I started exploring that, and I was in social groups. So I was in a choir. So I would, yes, I think I emailed them in advance to say this is what's going to happen. And they were really lovely. I've had such an amazing experience with people accepting me as I am, and
But you are the same lovely person. It's you say accepting you as who you are, but how could anybody not just, embrace who you are? You're just a lovely person, whether you're being Bethany or not Bethany. It's the same you underneath, and it's all those gorgeous character traits that you have, which are independent of that. We just see the lovely person that you are.
Oh, thank you. I think that is essentially true, but I also feel that being able to present as myself in this way, that it gives a chance for parts of my personality to be expressed that were not so easy when I was presenting male.
I see that.
I think it's really interesting what you were saying about how, with a hobby and presumably people who you got on well with, very relaxed atmosphere in a choir, you emailed them in advance. So actually, like, a lot of what you had to go through to take this step was considering the thoughts and feelings of others as much or possibly even more than your own. That must have been doubly tough, I think.
There's certainly a lot to think about, I think, yes. But I think that was a good approach, because I think that kind of thing maybe made the going smoother.
And in fact, you did that with me. How many, was that 2.5 years ago or something like that? I think when you first came, it was after your programme had been accepted, and we had our standard meeting the organisers meeting. And at the end of the meeting, it's been a really lovely meeting. I mean, this is an awesome team of organisers you have. It's been a really lovely meeting. And at the end, you just said, "Can I have a quick word, Christy?" And then you said, "I might have changed when I come to the Institute." And so that was sort of where our paths, you and me, where our paths began. And so it feels like I is part of this journey for you, because in a way we've all been in lockdown for the past, 18 months, and seeing very few people in person, and now your entire academic community is coming here. So it feels like this is, really a big introduction to Bethany.
And there was a lovely moment just before that, because I think at that stage I was a bit desperate. I really wanted to transition and to be Bethany all the time, but I was often wearing clothes that had a sort of a feminine aspect, and I wanted to try to signal it somehow. And also I was writing in purple, and I think you complimented me and said you enjoyed that, and
Yes.
That was nice, because it gave me an opening to then say what I did.
I remember that completely.
Yeah, that's really wonderful to hear. And it's Christy touched upon something there, which is that the last 18 months, obviously all of us have been kept away from family, friends, workplaces. It's a big step to go from being at home, working at home, perhaps interacting with people. I don't know if you're interacting with people as Bethany via video call and such, but to go from that to a big public program like this, that's a big step, and it's bigger than perhaps most people would go through, that contrast. How do you feel about that?
Yes, I think so. It's about a year ago I changed my details at work, changed my web page, and sort of changed everything there. And so I had a year. At that point, I was then full-time as Bethany. So I told my parents around the same time. I didn't want to change at work until I told them. And so I was just I've completely been Bethany for a year in my everyday life. And so that means I've been going to work meetings online and all these kinds of things. And so, if you'd asked me this question a year ago, I'd have said yes. Going to the Institute is probably when I'm going to start being physically out, and that's going to be the big step. But because I've had this year of sort of adapting to it during the lockdown, I've reached the point where I just feel like, well, this is just who I am now, just Bethany, and so it just feels very natural to go to the Institute. So I've done things sort of step by step, but there are big steps in there. Like I said, with the social events, I started with the choir and then the improv group. Sort of gradually increased the amount of time I was Bethany until I was doing it outside work. But this all happened over sort of quite a few months. So I tried to avoid taking big steps whenever I could. But as you say, I think I got quite emotional when I was talking to you, Christy, when I first arrived, and so I think there is some kind of emotional moment of coming here and being out in the workplace, and I've just felt so welcome here. I mean, everyone, all the staff at the Institute have made me very welcome, and the participants as well. So it's been really great. I feel that mathematicians have been very friendly and accepting me as Bethany, and it's going very well.
Yeah, that is really lovely to hear. Thank you for saying that. I'm curious because your interaction with your therapist, counsellor, I can't remember which term you used.
Therapist.
Therapist, yeah. Your interaction with the therapist sounded tremendously inspiring and helped you make the first steps. Has there been anyone else you've met along the way who's inspired you? Because I don't know how easy it would be to meet other people going through the same journey.
So I'm in the Beaumont Society, which is a sort of national society for trans people, and they have weekend events. So I've been going to those for some time, actually, even before I was seeing therapists, for example, and really starting to transition. So that's a bit of an outlet. So you can go along there, and you can be addressed by your name, and so I made some friends there. And it's quite important to be able to talk to others to find out what are their experiences. There was someone there, for example, who transitioned very quickly, and they sort of graduated in some sense. They stopped going because they so that was quite inspiring to see. Someone could do it quite fast, and compared to the sort of careful small steps I was making. So having, and also in Leeds, there's Trans Leeds, which is a group. It's the trans people, non-binary people, and they have social events. That's a lot of that's been online, but having others to talk to trade information about all the things you need to go through is very important.
It's really good to know that there are so many resources that people can call on, and I guess the reason I ask that is partly because I'm just really curious, and partly because I hope that anyone listening to this who is perhaps at the very beginning of such a journey or near the start would be able to look at these resources as open to them as well.
Yes, I think so. I think I would. The Beaumont Society is a good place to start because it's quite. It's just going to a hotel for a weekend if you want to do something physical, or you could even interact online only if you wish to. And a lot of people at an early stage are quite reluctant to to be seen out in public. So this is sort of like an intermediate stage, and I would definitely recommend going along to something like that. Trans Leeds are also very good at all the other people there in the same similar boat, and they know that it's important for it to be not to be widely spread. That it should be secret what's happening, and there's a lot of people out there to help. I think that's key.
That is very positive. And I have to say that all of the things that you've said so far have been really positive about the reception with your colleagues here and at the Institute and such. Is that absolutely true? I mean, have there been any more negative times that perhaps you'd rather not talk about, or that you rather would?
I've been very lucky. I think some people do have quite difficult times. But I think, and one thing that happened when I came out on Facebook, I did that quite late because they want lots of documentation. So I changed my name legally in May. That felt like a really big step, actually. That was, but that went well. It was a lot of work to do, but it all went well. And then I could change my name on Facebook once I got the documents through. And then I was contacted by someone. And she was saying, well, congratulations on your change of style. But you may think you're a woman, but you're not. And things like that. And it was someone I knew from some time ago. But I hadn't actually contacted that person.
Yeah, so do you have any advice on how to deal with that kind of being approached that way? Something potentially very hurtful.
Yeah, that's an interesting question, because I thought you have a choice. I mean, you can decide to respond and to get into a debate, or you could or not. I mean, you don't have to reply to that. So, and in the end, I decided a good approach might be to not get embroiled in a sort of big political discussion, because it's not necessary. You don't have to do that. You don't have to engage with the political discussion as a trans person. You might feel drawn to that, and that's fine. I mean, and it's important that there is some kind of discussion with that. But you don't have to do it, and it can be very difficult and emotional to get involved in such debates. And so my approach, so far at least, has been to avoid that. So I'm being quite careful not to get drawn into that. At least there might be a point later on where I feel ready for that I'm able to give some answers, because I think there might be some questions where I just don't know the answer. I just feel like, well, I am a woman, I'm a trans woman, but there's a lot of issues around that where it wouldn't be so easy to answer the questions.
Yeah, I absolutely understand. I mean, I guess it's similar in the very broad sense to being trolled in any way online, unless you think that you're going to have an actual discussion which might lead to some growth for both parties. Why engage? Yeah, I absolutely understand that point of view.
Perhaps social media isn't necessarily the best forum for that sort of conversation, and maybe doing what you're doing here now is actually a much more positive way to have that conversation.
Yes, that's true. Live your truth. That's important. Yes, authenticity is a big theme for me. So
we had a little talk before we did this recording, when I asked you about the fact that inclusion for trans people is very often under the banner of the very long LGBTQ+, and whether you felt that was like a positive thing and an inclusive thing. And I think your answer was that, yes, you feel very happy that trans is part of that. Because my question was, is it too broad a group to encompass the so many different kinds of people given in that term? And yes, your reaction was, yes, you're very happy, I think.
Yes, I'm very happy to be included in that grouping. I guess it's quite a broad church, and there are lots of different perspectives within that, and maybe not everybody agrees with that. but I think it's great, and I think it's, for example, it gives me the opportunity to meet people as well as other trans people, but then I can meet the L, G, and the B people, and so, and often there's intersectionality there. So,
I know examples of intersectionality within those cohorts as well.
Right, there. Yeah. So someone might be trans and bi, or trans lesbian, or trans and gay, and so on, and so there is a lot of overlap there.
I guess another interesting question is, it's fantastic that we can have this conversation and that you can feel comfortable with it, and that everything can be so positive, as you've suggested earlier. What can we do to continue to make an environment in which that's true, and which sort of encourages people to be sort of fearless and forthright with addressing this in their lives, so they don't have to go through years and years and years of perhaps feeling pressure from the outside not to be themselves? Is there anything more? I mean, I'm asking not specifically Christy and myself, but for us in general, what sort of outreach things do you personally think would be useful to help make the situation even better for everybody?
Yeah, I think it's already helpful. This sort of evolution of language is very helpful, because the existence of the word trans was actually a big thing for me. That I started thinking about it. That, well, does it apply to me? And at first I thought, well, I'm a cross-dresser, so I'm trans. And then of course I eventually realised that actually I'm a trans woman. So so that there was an evolution there. So using, yes, language is very important, and that makes me go at pronouns, and using the pronouns that people want to be known by is very important, and it can really make a big difference on the day. If often it might be I'm out in the world or something, and someone will refer to me by the wrong pronoun, and then I feel a bit of a stab inside, but I'm used to that. But when someone refers to me as she, it's just like it just feels so good. I think.
So there's a very positive movement, isn't there? Which, as you say, language is very important. Small touches are very important. There's a big movement of inclusion of your pronouns in your email signature, for example. Would you say that if everyone did that, it would be a very positive thing for this situation?
I think it would. Yes. But I think you have to be careful. It shouldn't be a mandated thing. It should be optional for people to do that. Some people really don't want to do it, and there shouldn't be a requirement to do that. One thing the university did for me was very helpful. There were lots of systems, both within the university, actually without as well. It was the same kind of thing. You've got to tell lots and lots of people about the change of name. They appointed someone to help me negotiate all of that. So having that kind of support, because there's so much to do when you're transitioning, having this support.
So that was the university appointed someone to help you, gave you that support?
Yes, it was someone from IT who...
That's fantastic.
Sort of
That's so enlightened of Leeds, actually, isn't it?
Yes, it was great. So, and I also, and there's the LGBT network as well. That was another thing. So having networks can really help. And that's actually what led me, that's really what enabled me to make the transition, I think. Because then through the network I got in touch with the equality unit. I think I would have been too nervous to do it myself. So I'm still thinking about the question, and I've turned it into a more personal story.
No, that's very welcome.
That was important that I had that. And I actually had some discussions with someone in the equality unit, and they helped me to figure out what I wanted to do. Was I ready to change in the university? And we had a few discussions. And it was through the network and the equality unit that I was put in touch with this person from IT who could then... We had regular meetings, and I made a list of the places that need to be changed, the different systems that needed to be changed. And that worked like a dream.
So really, you're saying you figured out in your heart where you wanted to be, and other people were helping you with that path to find out how you could get to that point.
As well as helping me figure out what was in my head.
Yes.
It was both. So So having support, counselling support or administrative support to make changes.
So those, it's amazing to me to hear about it, because it sounds like something that you have to be so determined and have so much self-belief to go through, because you have the realization within yourself, you have the concern about other people's reactions, and then you have, to top it all off, a bureaucratic challenge ahead of you as well, which it sounds like that support, as you've just detailed, was super helpful.
Yes, in a way it's also a positive thing, because it's like, I think it's known if you're motivated, if you've got something you really feel like you want to do with your life, then that can increase happiness. So I think having this sort of this thing that I really want to do is really helpful to me at the same time. So even though it takes up a lot of time and effort, it's also there's joy. That's the point.
It does. I have to say, it seems very obvious to me how joyful you feel about this, and it's really inspiring.
In fact, to everyone in the Institute, I think that's true, of just seeing the joy. And part of that is possibly joy of being at the Newton Institute, but there's probably a lot of joy in being at the Newton Institute as the person that you want to be.
Absolutely, there's real joy in that, and yes, I can just and stand up at the front of the lecture room or something and be aware that it's really happening, it's finally happening. There are great moments of joy, yes. Dancing. Sometimes when I'm dancing and I feel like I can just really dance in the way that I want to now.
Oh, that's wonderful. Do you feel like you could have done this earlier in life, or that you wanted to do it earlier in life, or is this absolutely the natural time at which it was meant to have happened or has happened?
Yeah, I think I wish I had done it earlier. I think society had reached a point. There's the trans tipping point around 2015. There was a Time magazine poster, front page, I think, which had that on. And that's because a lot of people were coming out as trans, and society was changing. That's what enabled me to do it at this point, I think. So it probably would have been a lot harder to do it earlier. Although I still waited even after. I mean, I think I didn't even realise that had happened. It was a few years afterwards that I started hearing about this, and I thought, I've missed out. Oh yeah, now it's time to go for it.
Yeah.
So, but I'd have loved to have been able to do that. I think it's when I was a teenager. It was when I was just starting. My ex also said she thought I seem like a woman. So I think it would have been very good to have been able to do that. But on the other hand, I'm delighted that I can do it now. Yeah,
absolutely. It must feel like a new life.
It is, yes, that's right. It can be. It really is a completely new start.
Yeah, that is so wonderful to hear. As I say, I really hope that if anyone listening to this has realised that they too would like to go on the same journey, that they find a lot of inspiration in how sort of easy, positive and joyful a lot of what you said has been. It's been wonderful to listen to.
Yes, in the end, it's about, if you can be yourself, then it feels really good. I was worried, for example, that I wouldn't find a partner if I made this change, because I guess I'm a more complicated proposition than I used to be. Well, perhaps I was always a complicated proposition, but in fact, my therapist pointed out, well, if you can be happy and joyful in yourself, actually you're more likely to find a partner. And so, yes, I think in the end, we all just need to be ourselves and to express ourselves the way we are. That's the bottom line, and that might not be. There might be some difficulties along the way. I think I'm very privileged that I've had relatively few difficulties. I've had to spend a lot of time, but I've had a lot of acceptance and a lot of help along the way, and I think that's not true for everyone. But there are good sources of help out there. There are hopefully friendships and support groups and so on. So seek that support and be yourself would be my advice. Yeah.
Yes, absolutely. I mean, it seems to me from your description like you've been very considered with every step, which perhaps is a reason why it's sort of gone smoothly, because everything's been very, very thoughtfully planned in many ways. But everyone will tell a different story, won't they? And I hope, as I say, that others find inspiration from the way that you have approached this issue and the results that it's yielding.
It's absolutely right. Everyone has a different transition story and do things in different order. And so only do something when you're ready. Yeah.
What does both in terms of life as Bethany and career-wise, and in terms of the science, what does the future hold for you?
I think it's leading towards more collaborative work. So I've been delighted to be invited to join a conference next April at Banff in Canada. It's Women in Non-Commutative Algebra and Representation Theory. So it's really nice to be accepted into that and to be involved. And it's a highly collaborative conference, so people work in groups of 6 or so.
That's a real mark of acceptance within the community, actually. That's lovely, isn't it?
It's a real delight. So I couldn't say
see
no
how
to
you
that.
could be really happy about that.
And until that point, you have all the collaboration here to look forward to as well for the next 3 months or so.
Yeah, this is really exciting. It really feels like there's a real buzz here. Lots of questions in the conference, and lot of interactions and lot of potential collaborations to look into. So it's really great to be here.
Super, yeah. And of course, we have a workshop today, and you will be busy this afternoon. Christy, before we let Bethany go back to work, are there any other points you wanted to pick up on at all?
So I would love to. There are lots of mathematical things that I would love to ask you about. So, for instance, the Whitehead Prize and things like that. That's such an amazing thing to have been given. So many people, superstars in front of you, have been awarded that. Nigel Hitchens, Caroline Series, Frances Kerwin, Tim Gowers. Is that a joy? Is it a responsibility? Does it feel like pressure to, because it's an early career thing, does it feel like, oh my goodness, I really have to deliver on that, or is it just a piece of joy?
Yeah, that's an interesting question. Yeah, so I was in the right place at the right time, I think, with the cluster category work. That was a big collaborative work with Aslak Buran and Marcus Reinecker, Eden Rayton, and Gordana Todorov. And there's quite a long and involved story about how that came about. But I was at the British Maths Colloquium. Michael Butler came up to me and said, that canonical basis stuff you're working on, Andrei Zanovinsky and Sergei Fomin have got all the answers. I was like, oh my God, I was really scared. So I invited Andrei, and I was already working with Marcus. And this was a startup grant at the University of Leicester, so that really made a big difference to me. I was able to do that, so I was able to invite. And we wrote there was a precursor to the cluster category paper with some of the ideas already there. So being in the right place at the right time to work with those people. And we found this connection between cluster algebras and representation theory. That was what was behind that. And in fact, there was a rival paper at the same time, Caldero, Chapeton, and Schiffler. So it's quite a complicated story. Their paper appeared a few weeks before ours, so we had to rush and finish ours. But they had a very different perspective. They had a more geometric perspective, which has also come to fruition. So actually, it was important both papers were there. So that all led to that's the work that was cited in the prize. That was the main part of it. There were other things, so I'm in a great position of having written a paper that's been very successful and led to a lot of further work. So one difficulty with that, like you're saying, what does that mean now? So you sort of feel like, could I ever do that again? So you've sort of done something really good. It's hard to live up to that as time goes on. So, but that's okay. I mean, people do different things, and I don't feel like I have to do something like that again. If it happens, then great. And we can only do the best we can as we're going on, And like you say, there's the early career aspect, and so it's important to be working with early career researchers and to help, to supervise them as PhD students, or to be a mentor for postdocs and so on. And then coming to the institute and making things happen here, bringing people in, and we've tried to be very make sure that the program's very diverse in lots of ways, including early career and gender and so on.
And so teaching and academic mentorship is an important part of who you are, would you say?
Yes, I love it. I love working with people and seeing their work develop, and when they write their own papers, and it's a delight, and it's and everyone is different, so it's quite challenging to work. Different people work out a good way to work with people, but it's very important because we need people to carry on as time goes on.
Something I love about this place is the level playing field. So when one first arrives here, you sort of see early career researchers very intimidated by the more senior academics. And then within a week or so, suddenly you see them working at the board together on a completely level playing field, and you see each one bringing something different to the table. There's the fresh eyes that the early career researcher is bringing, and the experience that the more senior academics bringing, and you can see each of them valuing the other's skill set.
Oh, that's fantastic. It's really working well here, isn't it?
Indeed.
Super. Well, I think we've taken up a fantastic amount of your morning, and I know there's seminars and such coming this afternoon. So, Bethany, we will let you go now, I think. But thank you very much for taking the time, and I can't wait to listen to this again because I found it very inspiring, and it's lovely to have you here and to be able to see you around until the end of December at the very least. Completely.
It's a real pleasure having you here, and I mentioned at the beginning of this podcast the magic and joy that your programme is bringing back to the I&I, which was really needed after this troubling period. And as we've mentioned before, your joy shines through, and it's infectious. So we thank you so much for that.
Well, it's a real delight to be here.
Well, as mentioned, we will speak again with your colleagues more broadly about the CAR programme, Cluster Algebras and Representation Theory. So thanks again, and we will speak to you soon.
Excellent. I look forward to that.
Thanks, Dan.